In this video, we're going to review multiplying and dividing with negative numbers. Just like adding and subtracting negative numbers, any negative number in an expression that you're trying to evaluate can make the problem quite a bit trickier. So you want to practice this to make sure that you don't make a simple mistake and do most of the math right, but get the answer wrong because you have a sign error. So the first rule we want to talk about is that multiplying or dividing any two negative numbers creates a positive number. Here's some examples. Two negative numbers being multiplied. We're not going to focus on what the answers to these are, but just whether it's positive or negative. Two negative numbers, that will be positive. Two negative numbers, positive. It doesn't matter how large they are, positive. And good news is that no difference for dividing. Negative 6 divided by negative 3 will be positive. These two numbers, negative 4 divided by negative 40 divided by negative 40, positive. Any two negative numbers that are being divided, one into the other, will be positive. Now, if there are an even number of negative numbers being multiplied or divided together, the result will be a positive number. A few more examples. That's one we just talked about. Two negative numbers being multiplied together, but four negative numbers being multiplied together because there are an even number of negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4 negatives. That will create a positive number. Even 6 negatives being multiplied together. That's probably not something that you would see, but just a demonstration that if there are an even number of negatives involved, either multiplying or dividing, the answer will be positive. Here we have an example involving division and multiplication, but we can see 1, 2, 3, 4 negatives. 4 is an even number. The result of this will be positive. Once again, we count the number of negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is an even number. The result will be positive. All of those negatives will end up canceling each other out. So if there are an odd number of negative numbers, that's going to create a negative number. That's probably not a big surprise. Here's an example. We have 1, 2, 3 negatives. The answer to this will be a negative number. Two negatives will cancel, leaving one negative. Here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives. 5 is an odd number. The result of this will be negative. This is a pretty extreme example. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 negatives. The result will be negative because 7's an odd number. Now, involving division and multiplication at the same time. Division is indicated by the fraction symbol, and we have a negative number on top, two negative numbers being multiplied on the bottom. We can just count the number of negatives in this whole expression. 1, 2, 3. We know that the answer will be negative. This will help you sort out possible incorrect answers. Look at this example. We have a positive number on top. We have 3 negative numbers being multiplied together on the bottom. That will result in an overall negative answer. It's a very important rule to remember when evaluating more complicated expressions like this. Now, a tip that you can keep in mind when you have these expressions that involve multiplication and division is that if you see the same number on the top and the bottom of the fraction, you can cancel this out. So we could very quickly look at that and realize that the answer is just 5 because everything else canceled out. We have a negative 3 on the top and a negative 3 on the bottom. Now, one thing to watch out for is that if you have something like this, 8 times minus 4 on the top of the fraction and 4 on the bottom of the fraction, you notice that there's a 4 on the top and the bottom, and that's great. We can cancel the 4 out, but we can't cancel the negative sign out because they are not both negative. So we would do kind of the same thing here, except our answer is going to be -8, because this one negative in the overall expression is still going to make our ultimate answer negative. So just keep that in mind if you're canceling. Let's go through a few example problems before you do some practice on your own. So first thing that we want to do in looking at an expression like this is count the negatives. There are 2, so we know that the answer is going to be positive. And we can use the same technique that I talked about when adding or subtracting. We can do 2 at a time here, if that's helpful to you, if you are trying to do this without a calculator. 2 times 3 is 6. So then it's going to be, and technically it would be -6 times -5. -6 times -5 is going to be positive, and that will be +30. But it is a good idea to try to figure out the sign right up front so that you know what to expect. Here, how many negatives do we have? 1, 2, 3. That's an odd number. Our answer will be negative. Let's do the 2 at a time thing, though. -3 times -1. 2 negatives make a positive. That's +3 times -2. That is going to be positive times a negative, -6. We knew that the answer was going to be negative. Next problem. It's getting a little bit more complicated here. Here we have 4 numbers. They're all negative. 4 negatives. Our answer will be positive. But let's do 2 at a time here. -2 times -2. That will make a +4. And then we're times -1 times -1. We'll do 2 at a time again here. 4 times -1. That's -4. And that's times -1. 1 times 4, still 4. But the answer will be positive because these are both negative. Next problem. -50 divided by -5 times -2. Now with fractions, I recommend that you simplify the tops and the bottoms separately. We don't have anything to simplify on the top. That's just a number. But on the bottom, we can multiply -5 times -2, and we get +10. And now we are set up to just do the simplification of the fraction, which is just division in this case. We have 1 negative, 1 positive. Our answer will be negative, and 50 divided by 10 is 5. We knew that the answer would be negative because there were 1, 2, 3 negatives in the original problem. One more to review here. Once again, we don't have to simplify the top, but we want to simplify the 2 sides of the fraction completely. -5 times 2, 2 at a time here, gives us -10. And that will be multiplied by -2. -10 times -2. 2 negatives make a positive. 10 times 2 is 20. And we have 40 divided by 20. That will give us an answer of 2. Let's go back and make sure that our answer should be positive. How many negatives did we have in our original problem? 1, 2. 2 is an even number. Our answer should be positive, and it is. All right, it's time for you to practice some more on your own.